The striking physical similarities of twins could actually be the least interesting connection between them. Did you know sometimes one twin experiences an inexplicable emotion, sense of foreboding, or even a physical sensation of something that's happening to their co-twin, such as an emotional distress or even a physical pain or injury? My sister and I are identical twins. We live about 10 miles apart, and one night I experienced a horrible sleep paralysis. During this awful experience, my sister shook me awake and we talked for about half an hour before we finally and calmly fell back asleep. Well, the next morning I woke up and immediately just started talking to her about it. And while I stood up from the bed, still talking, I realised that she wasn't even with me that night. She was at her own house. And in that instant, as I'm standing there in my PJs just processing my confusion, she calls me to tell me of a weird dream that she had and how in her dream she shook me awake because I was having night terrors. 1 in 5 identical twins and 1 in 10 fraternal twins have experienced some form of telepathy with each other. So it's clear that telepathic connection between twins isn't universal by any means, but it is common enough that it offers some of the best examples of telepathy among humans for researchers to study the phenomenon. When I was 13, my identical twin sister and I were sitting on our front lawn right by the road, just pitching acorns across into our neighbour's yard. We saw a motorcycle coming down the road from very far away, and we both just turned and looked at each other and said, "It's going to crash." There was no obvious or logical reason for us to think this, but for some reason we were both positive that it was going to happen. Well, we jumped up and raced onto the porch and grabbed the telephone so that we could call for help. And just as we came back out, the motorcycle crashed in the exact spot that we'd been sitting. I've got no doubt we would have been killed if we'd stayed there. The bike itself was written off. The guy was injured, but he was going to be okay. But this is just one example. These weird premonitions have happened to my sister and I all our lives. There are many, many, many stories of telepathy between twins saving a life, whether it be foreseeing an accident or a medical emergency. In March 2009, 15-year-old Gemma Horton was suddenly struck with the overwhelming feeling that her twin sister Leanne was in trouble. Gemma hurried to the bathroom where she knew that Leanne was taking a bath, and there she found her sister submerged in the water, unconscious and turning blue. Leanne is an epileptic, and Gemma realised that she had suffered a seizure in the tub. Well, Gemma quickly pulled her sister out from the bathtub, administered CPR and revived her, saving her life. I got this sudden feeling to check on her. It was like a voice telling me, "Your sister needs you," Gemma later said. She was under the water. At first I thought she was washing her hair or playing a trick, but when I lifted her head out, I saw that she'd turned blue, and I knew then that she'd had a fit. Had Gemma not been compelled by that feeling to check on her sister, Leanne almost certainly would have drowned that day. Telepathy in its strongest form tends to happen when it is needed, as opposed to just using it for a party trick or to win a board game, although that is surprisingly common too. I have twin daughters. Once, when they were around 18 months, I went to pick them up at daycare and I was standing there watching them as I was chatting with the teacher. Well, they were on opposite sides of the room from each other, and each of them were pushing a play stroller with a baby doll in it at the exact same time, with no discernible communication between them. They both stopped, walked to the other side of the room, and started pushing the other stroller. It was crazy. Don't you think that that kind of silent action between very young twins like that sounds like something from a horror movie? If you enjoy my videos of strange but true tales, please consider becoming a patron. Patrons receive bonus videos, and their support helps me to cover the costs of making these videos so that I can keep making them. For more info, just check out the link in the notes below. When I was a kid, I would have these seizures in the middle of the night when I was sleeping. On the nights that I would have these seizures, my twin sister would wake up from her sleep and have this weird sort of tunnel vision, like the room would gradually grow lighter and lighter, and then it would go darker and darker. And for her, she knew that this was a sign that I was going to have a seizure. So she would run into my parents' room and wake them, then they'd rush to my side and be with me before the grand mal seizures began, and then they could get me to the hospital without delay. If that doesn't prove that twins' brains have a weird kind of connection, I don't know what does. Our last set of twins shared a bizarre connection. It's not so much telepathy, but it's super weird, and I wanted to share it with you. In June 2015, I suddenly developed a bald spot in my beard. It was just a small, round, bald spot, and it appeared overnight. I freaked out a bit, but a doctor friend of mine told me it looked like classic alopecia and would probably grow back. In December 2015, so about 6 months later, my twin came for a visit. We actually live on different continents and we don't see each other very much. And when he saw my bald spot, he goes, "What the hell? How long have you had that spot?" I told him that I'd had it since June. He looked stunned and he said, "I had a bald spot in my beard and it grew back in June." He never found out what it was or what had caused it, but he obviously transferred that freaking bald spot to me. Anyway, he said that he'd had it for exactly a year, and mine grew back in June 2016, after exactly a year. Examples of telepathy or a bizarre connection or physical symmetry aren't restricted to twins, of course. They can occur when the sender and receiver enjoy a very strong bond, like mothers and babies, or even owners and their pets, or lifelong friends. Do you have your own experience to share? I'd love to read about it. Please share your experience in the comments below. And remember, it's a strange world. Keep your eyes and ears open and be kind. Cheerio!